Okay, so I'm going to try and answer this. When you're meditating, okay, these processes here are just going. You can't turn them off without turning the brain off, right? So that it's just like when your eyes are open, vision is online, right? Okay, so when you're meditating, the executive generates a belief about what meditation is. It applies that belief heuristically to the qualia, and those heuristics are used in a feedback system to adjust how the qualia is being presented. Now, the idea with meditation is that you're going to try and stop this feedback loop, right? So there's an inherent contradiction in what's happening. So that's why it's so difficult for the mind to become relaxed. But the idea is that this feedback loop can never actually be removed, and it's very important to the functioning of the mind. But the idea is that you relax the feedback loop, and then the executive can start to generate different beliefs about. Actually, the anomaly detectors the anomaly detector fires every time that you return to the breath, because you detect an anomaly between your belief of what meditation is and the qualia that's been presented, and then the mind skips between the two extant belief structures.
I'm not quite sure where this 2 approach is.
Okay, so there'll be an innate structure in here, which is generating causal propositions and analyzing causal propositions.
That cannot be turned off.
Cannot be turned off. It's just the way the mind works. It's like if you see someone throw a cricket ball through the window, baseball through a window, automatically there's no way to stop it, but automatically you'll associate personality traits with the person, and you'll make causal inferences about what just happened, and there'll be a storyline there, and there's no way to stop that storyline. That storyline's created unconsciously, right? And it's presented in qualia as a real reality.
Or is being created unconsciously the story formulated as words?
Words is a symbolic representation, which works on a different level to mentalese. So mentalese is not words.
Okay.
Anyway, so is there some other questions? Sorry, you had your hand up.
Oh, yeah, I have a question about the executive.
Yeah.
And about whether or not the executive just means the conscious mind. And in particular, how does that relate to all of this stuff in that anomaly detection box?
Oh, yeah?
Yeah.
Okay, so the conscious mind is the qualia. That's the conscious mind. So there's...
What is that exactly?
Okay, so the executive has qualia associated with it, but the executive is an information processing system which is designed to create beliefs about the self, about the qualia. And it also engages in long-range planning and initiates controlled actions. So there's a motor system in the brain which receives automatic and controlled input, and the executive does that.
Are you aware of any literature that associates the location of the executive in neural networks?
Yeah, okay, so there's been a lot done about this. So the executive, according to the latest theory, is located in the limbic system, which is one of the more primitive systems of the brain, between the angular singular cortex and the amygdala. Okay, and the angular singular cortex is involved in regulating emotions, and the amygdala actually is what is giving every emotion in the body. Every emotion we experience, with the exception of disgust, interestingly, is associated with the amygdala. So the amygdala is looking at all these objects in the sensory field and putting emotional valences on all of them. So, yes.
You said that all humans somehow think in mentalities.
Yes. Sorry.
Is there anything that you know what lower level creatures would think in? For example, a cat or a dog?
Well, you could postulate that a cat has mentalese. Like if the human mind is an information processing system, then mentalese is the symbols. So it's like a Turing machine, and the mentalese is the zeros and ones on the tape, right?
Okay.
So if the human mind works that way, then you can postulate that that a cat mind would have its own mentalese. And you could probably go further and say that the innate structuring of the mentalese would have a lot in common with the innate structuring in our minds as well, actually. So, for example, a cat
How
is...
far can you go down so that the
Oh yeah?
any creatures still assume?
Okay, this is an interesting thought experiment because there's no dividing line between sentient and non-sentient creatures. So human beings is obvious, tree obviously not, right? But as you go through the animal kingdom and the plant kingdom and all the different animals, you find like there's this grey area that develops, and you can't actually find a line where this creature is sentient and this creature is not sentient. So, like if, for example, if you see a picture of a clam going across the ocean floor, if you see it time lapse, it seems like the clam's like an intelligent creature. And starfish too might seem like they're an intelligent creature, but a starfish is kind of like a plant and an animal at the same time. Okay. Anyway, so yeah.
When you talk about the difficulty of creating strong AI, one of you mentioned that finding that complexity, finding that solution for that complexity, the boundary, if you will,
Yeah.
between order and chaos.
Yeah.
And also, this is a continuous analog system. Do you think there's an inherent problem with the current models of software development, computer programming, that use, say, linear digital systems, or that use statistical modeling systems, rather than actual computer systems? Or, I mean, they have inherent structure, high-level structure in the
Yeah.
programming. Can we even approach this problem with that structure? We need an entirely different structure.
You know what? I don't think there's any problem with using digital systems to recreate these information processing systems. Because if you see them as information processing systems, okay, the very famous example of the edge of complexity is this fractal, which looks like a, I don't know, it's got a little thing here, and you know what I'm talking about, right? You've all seen this fractal. So it's generated by an extremely simple mathematical formula, and it's like a programming tutorial in chaos mathematics to demonstrate how to generate this picture. So there's no problem with using these sort of formal mathematically rigorous ideas to generate things which exist on the edge of complexity.
So I wonder, is this picture is interesting also, it's a kind of model that you propose in some
Yeah,
sense.
yeah.
But I wonder, does it take a stance on some of the philosophical controversies? For instance, the executive is shown, and is it still open towards a controversy about free will or not free will? Because the executive could force this president to just do what he proposed.
Yeah.
Or there could be some free will hidden in one of the boxes. So is your model taking any stance?
Where's free will? Yeah. Okay, so free will is an interesting question. Again, when you think about the problem of free will, you have to appreciate that the mind has different processing systems which take, you can say, different points of view. So from a certain point of view, there's going to be free will, and from a different point of view, there isn't going to be free will. So Daniel Dennett's written a lot about this. So,
So, for instance, you could say now free will, the executive just proposes some course of action, and it's presented to the present, where you think the cortex consciousness might be situated, and it just watches what the executive proposes, but does not do it.
but doesn't do it. Yeah, well, you know, in the legal system, I think if you want to understand free will, you should look into religion and the legal system, because that's where it's most relevant and that's where the most thoughts have been generated. So in the legal system, you can be not guilty for reason of insanity, and what that means partially is that you weren't in control of your behavior at the time, so there was no free will there. So if there was no free will there, it's inhumane to punish the person as though there was free will. Now, if the executive has a belief, and that belief causes a certain behavior, like throwing an innocent fat man onto the tracks, and people decide that they have a problem with that, you could say, well, the executive made this choice, and we're going to punish the belief structure of the executive, and then that's going to change the belief structure, or that's going to factor into the belief structure that the executive has, right? So when you think about free will, you have to think about punishment and the societal issues involved. If you try and think about free will in terms of electrons and protons and neutrons and whatnot, it's the wrong grain size. Okay,